1 minute. Oh, I washed my hair today. It was so lovely.
It's scared.
Okay. Are we live? We're live. Okay. So firstly, hello and welcome to Tracy Talks 2. And this is my special edition where I talk to 3 legends of the blogging community. And we are going to be talking about some amazing, hotly anticipated new books, which have been published January, being published in February, and being published in March. We've each chosen 3 books for each month. So lucky you guys, you get to see or get to hear about 36 new books that are coming live, coming out now or coming out soon. So I'm just going to go ask everyone to introduce ourselves, and then we're going to obviously talk about our books. So I'm Tracy, and my blog is Compulsive Readers, and I have been reading since I can remember, and I love books, all books, and that's me. Anne?
Oh, hello, sorry. And I'm Katie.
Hotly anticipated new books, which have been published in January, being published and I have reading.
Sorry.
Feedback.
Sorry about that. I'm Anne Cater, and I blog at Random Things Through My Letterbox. I've been blogging for 10 years in March.
Jo?
Hi, I'm Jo Robertson. I blog at My Chestnut Reading Tree, and I've been blogging for 5 years now.
We have to keep making sure Linda hasn't frozen or fallen asleep. Linda,
I'm getting old, you know. I'm Linda Hill, and I blog at Linda's Book Bag, and I was 6 yesterday.
Happy birthday! Did you do anything special? Did you have a party? Or?
I had chocolate and gin.
Oh, lovely, lovely. Right. Well, we've got a few people already saying hello. I'm just going to say a very quick hello to everyone who's viewing us live now. Jacob Collins says hi. So hi, Jacob. So we're going to talk firstly about books that have just come out in the month of January. And I'm going to go first, if that's okay. And I've got 3 books I want to talk about. The first book is one that I believe absolutely everyone has read or should read. And that is this little darling thing here, which is The Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean. If you have not read any of Will Dean's books before, then you must. You are missing out big time. The Last Thing to Burn is a standalone book from Will. He has a little series going on, which is wonderful, and you should read that too. But this book, to me, is just heads and shoulders above anything he's done before. It's about a woman who's held captive. I don't want to talk too much about what it's about because it's really difficult not to give it away. But it's talked about in the tradition of misery and room, is what it actually says on the blurb, which I think is quite a good description of the book. Her name is Jane, or her husband calls her Jane, but that is not her name. She lives in a small farm cottage, surrounded by vast open fields. Everywhere she looks, there is space, but she is trapped. Her husband records her every moment during the day, and if he doesn't like what he sees, she is punished. This book just blew me away, and I actually will easily put it down for I read it in December, but I easily would have put it down for my book of the year. It is absolutely incredible in terms of it's atmospheric, it's creepy, the violence, whilst it's not described in the book in much detail, you can't get it out of your head. Your imagination is probably far worse than what actually is happening. It's just wonderful, and I know that the 3 of you have read it and loved it as much as I do. So I would just say it's simply outstanding in my personal opinion. I just thought it was compelling, and I just think he's a genius. So I would say my number 1 book for January, if you haven't read it, is definitely The Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean. So my next book I seem to be on a bit of a dark. I'm just going to get my next book up here. Hold on a second. My next book is The Push by Audrey Audrain. Now, I like dark and disturbing, and I actually don't believe you can get darker and more disturbing than this book. It's about motherhood. It's about relationships. It's about oh dear me, let me just think. I'm just trying to remember. It's basically about a baby who is born, a little baby Violet's born to a mother who doesn't feel that she really should be a mother, and it's her relationship with this child. It's a psychological thriller, and it is really twisted and really disturbing, and it's especially twisty and disturbing because it has a young child in it, and the relationship between the mother and the child, but then there's also the flashbacks to the relationship between the mother and her mother, so you have 3 generations of women. It is, I think, one that gets right under your skin. As a mother it affected me, but as a woman it affected me, and as a daughter it affected me. So I would say that that's my second book that I absolutely loved, and that's The Push by Ashley Audrain. And my final book for January is another dark one, which is, I don't know where my camera is, which is Girl A by Abigail Dean. Now, Girl A is a story. Let me just get my notes here because I don't remember everything here. It's being marketed as the biggest fiction debut of 2021 and the book that will define a decade. That's how it's being marketed, which are quite powerful statements. So my expectations were pretty high. It's narrated by Lex, who is now a successful lawyer living in the US and who grew up with her 6 siblings in her parents' house, which is known as the House of Horrors. They are all victims of horrific abuse and neglect at the hands of their parents. Lex finally escapes at the age of 15 and was therefore dubbed Girl A. It's beautifully written. It's very, very powerful and dark, and another disturbing and heartbreaking. I'm not sure that it's going to be the biggest fiction debut this year. I'm sure there's going to be other books. And I don't necessarily think it's going to be a book that defines a decade. But I say, if you like dark fiction and you like disturbing tales, then you should read Girl A. And those are my 3. And I really hope yours are lighter and nicer because I've obviously gone on the dark side. So, Anne, over to you for your 3.
Okay, thank you. I've got kind of 3 very different books for January, so they're not all dark, but the first one is pretty dark. So my first one is The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor. This is Cass Tudor's 4th book, and what I really, really like about her is, though it's crime, it's a bit supernatural. She's got a bit of a horror in there. She's the first person to admit that she's really, really influenced by Stephen King, and a lot of people make that kind of connection with her. Personally, I think this is her best yet, and I've loved them all. The Burning Girls is about a female vicar and her daughter who move from a city centre parish in the centre of Nottingham under a cloud, but we're not really sure why, to a tiny village in Suffolk, I think it is. But the village has got a lot of legend. So the Suffolk martyrs came from there. They were burned at the stake in hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And 2 of the Suffolk martyrs were teenage girls. And they celebrate, if that's the right word, in the village every year, these teenage girls, by making little straw girls and setting them afire. So and I have to admit that when I was reading this about this female vicar who's very trendy and funny, I couldn't help but see Dawn French as the vicar. She was there in my head. It's not at all, but she's all I could see. But they come across a lot of strange things. So the daughter sees apparitions of burning girls, and they smell burning, and there's a lot of things happen to them, and they're in a lot of danger at times. But there's an amazing twist at the end. It's really, really, really good. I just really enjoyed it. If you like her other books, you'll love this one. It's the best yet, and it's Penguin issued by Penguin. So that's book one. Where to put it? My second book is completely and utterly different. So this is The Dressmaker of Paris by Georgia Kaufman. It starts in 1991 and it's narrated by a lady called Rosa, and she's telling a story to someone she just calls ma chère, and she's getting ready for what is the most important meeting of her life. And Rosa is very well known as being extremely well dressed and always very elegant and never puts a foot wrong. And she's telling the story and goes back to her early days. So Rosa was born in the mountains of Italy in a very small village just before the First World War. And when the Nazis invaded her village, something really, really dreadful happened to Rosa, and she left. And she found herself in Paris, where she was discovered by Christian Dior and became his muse. And then she found that she was actually quite good at fashion design herself. And so she started her own company. She had different relationships. And Tracy, I think last time we spoke, you were talking about the Jewish burial ceremony in the stone setting. And I said to you, I've just read a book about that, and that's all in here. One of her husbands was Jewish, but he didn't actually follow the Jewish faith. But when he died, all the other Jewish people came and told her what she had to do. And it was really, really fascinating. So it goes through, and then at the very end, I kind of did guess what the important meeting was. But it's just so beautifully written, and I learned so much about it. It's not just an ordinary war story. There's so much more to it. It's really, really beautiful. So that's book two, and that is Hodder. And my final book's different again. So this is the proof copy, and I don't know if you can see it very well. The finished cover's very different. This is People Like Her, written by Ellery Lloyd. Ellery Lloyd is actually a pseudonym for a London-based husband and wife writing team. And it's about, I think she's called Emmy. She's known on Instagram as Mama Bear, and she's got millions of followers. Her whole life is curated, and everything is photographed and hashtagged, and life is just content. Their whole life revolves around these little grids. Her husband kind of goes along with it, but he's really getting pretty fed up of it. And then something really kind of strange starts to happen. They find photographs of their own daughter on Instagram being posted by somebody else who claims that this child in the photographs is her daughter, and she's really sick and she needs money, and it's really, really quite horrible. It really makes you think about social media, and I'm a great fan of social media. I think we as humans tend to blame social media instead of actually blaming the people who are on social media. I do, so, but it's really fascinating how quite ordinary people can live their life according to what they want other people to think about them. And that's it's really quick read as well, but it's kind of compelling. It's a bit dark, really, although an easy read. So, and that is Mantel, which is Pan Macmillan, I think.
Thank you. Joe? Joe, can you hear me?
I can now. Yeah, I think
Morning.
you've gone again, but I'll just talk anyway, shall I? And then just wave at me when you want me to stop. Right, my first book is The Captive by Deborah O'Connor. And I'll read you the blurb for that one. Hannah knows the cage intimately. Small, the size of a shopping mall parking space. A bed, a basin, a table and a chair. A hatch and a metal drawer through which to exchange food and other items. Then there's him, always there on the edges of her vision, no matter how hard she tries to block him out. Every day, the same thoughts run through Hannah's mind. What if he speaks to me? What if he hurts me? What if he gets out? Now, I absolutely love this. This is I mean, Deborah O'Connor, I love all her books, but this is my favourite so far. I think it's set in a kind of a near future where prisoners, there's no room for them in prison anymore. So what they do is they pop them in a cell in the house of the person that they have sinned against, shall we say. So she has in her kitchen, she's a cake decorator by trade, and in the corner of her kitchen there is a cage, and in that cage is the man, they put the man who has murdered her husband. So, but it's kind of told from his point of view and her point of view, and there certainly are a few twists and turns along the way that, yeah, loved it, absolutely loved it, that one. The second one is another one beginning with the, as most of my books are, I noticed. It's the new buzzword for 2021, the. It's The Appeal by Janice Hallett. Again, slightly very different because there is no proper narrative as such with this one. It's all told mostly through emails, and it's about a dramatic society who put on plays and all those sort of things, and somebody gets murdered, somebody goes to prison, and everybody is a suspect. So it's very, very difficult to get into. I struggled to begin with because she doesn't describe the characters, so you've got no physical vision of the characters. She doesn't describe any settings at all. It is just purely all done pretty much through email, and it's amazing how well you actually get to know these people just through what they're saying to each other. And the last one is The Survivors by Jane Harper. Now, Jane Harper wrote The Dry, which is one of my favourite books of all time. I absolutely love it. Now, this one, I have to admit, I haven't read it yet. I pre-ordered it. It arrived at the end of January. But also at the end of January, my new grandson arrived. So I haven't had time to read it. But that's going to be my half-term treat to myself.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Well, she can't hear me.
Can't hear you.
Linda, can you hear me?
I can. So my first one, I don't know where my camera is either, is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. And it's set in a slave plantation. And it's about the homosexual love between Samuel and Isaiah. But it isn't. It's about all sorts of things. It's about identity. It's about women. It's about slavery. It's about race. There's history, geography, mythology. It's not an easy read. There's some really nasty events in here. The structure is really challenging. It took me a long time to work out what was going on and which bits were now and which bits were mythology. But if you stick with it, it's a book that is incredibly touching, really brilliantly written, poetically written. And Robert Jones Jr. has slavery in his ancestry. And he has talked quite eloquently about the book and wanted to explore love and forms of love and sexuality and homosexuality within slavery, which nobody's really done before. So it's a mind-blowing book, and the violence within it is really disturbing at times. But I really recommend it. I've seen mixed reviews, but I loved it. So that's The Prophets, Robert Jones Jr., and that's out from Riverone, which is a Quercus imprint. My second book is The Crooked Tree, Una Mannion. And again, it's more of a literary fiction. It's a crime thriller in a sense, But it's, again, another book about family and about identity. And it's Libby's mum decides to throw out her daughter from the car. She's being a pain, she's whining, so her mum says, right, get out, you can walk. And of course, she doesn't come home, or at least not to start with. And the repercussions of that action reverberate right through the book. And it's about who you can trust and who you can't trust. There are revenge actions. Libby is trying hard to find her own way in the world. And if I just read you the bit off the back, really, the blurb from this. Rage, that's the feeling engulfing the car as Ellen's mother swerves over to the hard shoulder and orders her daughter out onto the roadside. Ignoring the protests of her other children, she accelerates away, leaving Ellen standing on the gravel verge in her school pinafore and knee socks as the light fades. What would you do as you watch your little sister getting smaller in the rear view window? How far would you be willing to go to help her? And it's creepy, it's scary, it makes your pulse race. Really, really good read. And that one's from Faber and Faber. And then my third one is all over the internet and everywhere at the minute. It's Ali Reynolds' Shiver. It's set in the world of snowboarding. It's a lock room mystery, really. There are 6 characters who go to a reunion up in the Alps and find themselves the target of somebody. And you don't know for certain who it is that is out to get them and trying to kill them off. In the past, another character, Saskia, has disappeared. And it's not clear as the book progresses whether Saskia is really dead, whether she's trying to kill them off, which one of them may or may not have killed her, may or may not be out to kill the others. It's really fast-paced, creepy, and also really enlightening. I didn't really know anything about snowboarding, but it really gives you an insight into that competitive world and the way in which females do not have to be shy and retiring, but can be quite aggressive and quite manipulative. So a really good thriller. I enjoyed that very much indeed. So those are my 3 for January.
Lovely, thank you. If anyone does, there's a few people just making comments here as we go along. We will give you a full list of all of the books that we've talked about, which will be uploaded on my blog later. Shiver is brilliant, says Leona. Also, Elizabeth Haynes, she loved The Appeal too. She said it was unusual and compelling. I'm just reading through. Jacob thought that The Captive was brilliant. And Melissa just glanced through and thought that this was the Zoom council meeting that's gone live.
You have no right to say that.
Now listen here.
Bark for 15 years. Yeah.
So anyway, right. So moving on. So now that's January. We've given you 12 wonderful books. They all sound wonderful and highly obviously recommended from us. So now we're on to February. So my 3 books, again, I really think I need some psychiatric help or something because again, they're pretty dark. So the first book I'm going to recommend is Dead. Oh, there we go. Deadhead by C.J. Scoos. Now, I don't know if anyone has read the Sweet Pea series. Have you? Any of you guys read? You have. Okay. Joe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good, right, okay. Sorry. So this is the 3rd book in the Sweet Pea series, and you can't read this as a standalone. So, don't even bother because book 1, Sweet Pea, is outrageous. Book 2, In Bloom, is phenomenal. And Deadhead, book 3, is, well, I'd like to swear, it's bloody, it's absolutely flipping outrageous. It's absolutely right up my street. It's rude, it's inappropriate, it's absolutely everything that the first 2 books were plus. So if you haven't read these books yet, and you want to giggle and you don't mind offensive language and you don't mind rude women actually serial killing women who go out and and attack paedophiles and cut off their penises, then I would really strongly recommend this book, because I could not stop laughing. In fact, this is a book that I was reading in bed and I'm snorting whilst reading it, and the husband is saying to me, if you don't shut up, you could sleep downstairs. It's just outrageous. And so Deadhead basically finds our feisty female serial killer on the run, and she's hiding out from the authorities by jumping on a cruise. And I'm a huge cruise fan as it is, so it just appealed to me. She was on a 14-day cruise around the Med, going to all the different centres and towns that I've been to. So I was relating. Obviously, I wasn't relating as a serial killer because that's not me, but it was just hysterical, and I 100% recommend it. 5 stars, and it's just brilliant. It just lightened up this miserable month for me. So that is Sweet Pea. That is Sweet Pea Book 3, Deadhead by CJ Skews. It's out now, and 5 stars. 100% recommend that. My next book, again, another. I'm doing really well. Is Safe and Sound. Where's my mic? There we go. By Philippa East. Now this is, I don't know if any of you read it yet. This is out this month, or I think it's actually already out. It came out earlier last week. This is really quite a disturbing book, and it's beautifully written. It's about a woman called Jen who lives with her young child. She's a single mom. She has crippling anxiety. She works in the council, and she basically is quite a sad, insular person. She doesn't have anyone around her apart from her child. She's fallen out with her family for various reasons, and one of her jobs is to look after a block of flats, and one of the tenants hasn't paid their rent, so it's her job, unfortunately, to go and evict this tenant. So she turns up on the morning to evict this tenant, and they're knocking at the door. They can hear the radio playing. They finally have to break in, and there's a body, and the tenant is a young woman who is lying there dead, but it becomes pretty apparent that she's been dead for 10 months, but nobody has even noticed. So Jen decides, for reasons unknown at the beginning, to start investigating how, in the middle of London, because it's all in Brixton, it's all set in Brixton, how a young woman can just be left and nobody look for her for 10 months. And so she investigates privately, and it's just a beautiful well-written book. It's just really, it's very claustrophobic. There's a lot to do with her anxiety. It's a lot to do with mental health. But I think it's a beautifully written book about the mental health issues that Jen suffered from, about her obsession and the whole feeling of being isolated, even though you live in the middle of London. So that was my book I would recommend. And finally, now, if nobody knows me, or if everyone knows me, you will know how much I love this author. There we go. This is the third book, You, Me and the Sea, by Elizabeth Haynes. There you go. Oh, look. Now, Elizabeth is actually watching this, so
I finished it yesterday.
Just starting it.
I first read Elizabeth's book Into the Darkest Corner, which is a psychological thriller, obviously, and it changed my reading. That was the book that switched me from chick lit to to thrillers. So she made me go to the dark side. So I followed her career, and I followed her books and loved all her books. And when her last book, the Harriet Monckton book, came out, which was completely changed the genre, I was a bit worried, but didn't need to be because it was fantastic. But when this one arrived and I saw that there was no dead bodies and it was just a romance, I was slightly concerned again. But then again, I needed to worry, because Elizabeth has the ability of writing, I think, in any genre to such a superior book writer. I don't mind. Look, I've lost it. Hold on a second. Let's start again. I see. I'm just all. She's watching now as well, so I'm trying to right. This is a book based in a little island in Scotland. It's called the Isle of Must, And it's about two lost souls. One lady called Rachel. It is Rachel, yes, called Rachel, who has basically, in her own words, fucked up her life up to now, and decides that she is going to take a temporary job working in as a housekeeper in a lighthouse on a very isolated, secluded island. And on the island is a man called Fraser, who lives and works on the island as a bird watcher stroke whatever lighthouse keeper. This big man, this big huge, she describes him, I don't know, to me in my head he's either Captain Birdseye or Hagrid. I'm not sure which one he is, but she describes him as this big hairy mountain of a man. Rachel is a fabulous character. She's feisty, she's outspoken, she says what she wants, and there is an attraction between them. Fraser is living there isolated with one other person that we find out about later, and and it becomes a love story of such. I don't do romance, but Elizabeth promised me there was loads of sex, so I waited and we got to the sex, and that was lovely. It was lovely. It's just beautifully written. It's very atmospheric. It's very brooding, and it left me happy. And that sounds awful. It left me. I was sated. It was a lovely book, and I would say that yes, you should definitely read it because she's an incredible author, and I thoroughly recommended it. So that was You, Me, and the Sea, and that's my third book for February. Anne.
I have to agree about that Elizabeth's book. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. I loved it. I love Fraser. I want Fraser myself. Anyway, back to me. There was a time when I used to say I don't read historical fiction, and if someone had sent me a book and it said London 1782, I would. But I've got two more historical fiction here, and the first one is this little beauty. This is Daughters of Night by Laura Shepherd Robinson. Now, this was supposed to be published on the 25th of June 2020, but it's actually published next week. So we've been waiting a long time. I read this over Christmas, and there's a lot of pages, 500 and something, and it took me a day and a bit, I think. I was totally lost in it. So in her first book, Blood and Sugar, there's a kind of secondary character called Caro Caution. Caro Caution is the main character in this book, and she's amazing. It's a bit of a murder mystery. It's definitely historical crime. Basically, Caro finds a dead woman in the grounds of. I've forgotten what the actual little thing is that she's found in. Anyway, she finds this dead woman, and she thinks that it's her friend. It is her friend, but she finds out that her friend is not actually the lady she thought she was, but she is a sex worker. And Caro is determined to find and hunt down the killer because the police don't care, because the victims are nobody, a prostitute, not worth it. And it is absolutely wonderful. It's really relevant today. Laura takes a lot of social issues of the day that we still need to deal with today. It's just London. When it tells you about a tiny village called Deptford, and it's amazing when you see Covent Garden and people who live there, and then you think about Covent Garden now. It's just so beautifully imagined. It's really, really wonderful. And I know it's a big thick book, but honestly, it's worth every single page and more. So that's my first book. My second book is Downstairs on the Settee with the Bloke. He's actually reading it now. Bloke, are you there? Anyway, it's Matt Veselowski's Deity, and it's number 125 in the 6 stories. Or is it 6? Anyway, these are the others, because I haven't got it with me at the moment. For anyone who knows, 6 stories is they're crime novels, but they're written in the form of a podcast. Here he is, pajamas on. I read the first one.
I think we should ask the bloke what he thinks of it.
What do you think? pop your head in.
Well, mine's 68 pages in, but yeah, it's good so far.
There you go.
Well, I read the first one when it first came out, 6 stories, and then somehow the bloke sort of kind of took over, and he met Matt and they got on really well, and he started to read them and he's just like obsessed with them, and he writes the reviews for the blog tour, so it's his turn on Friday. That's why he needs to get his arse down there and finish it. Because I don't want to be chasing him and asking where's your blog tour post, mate. Anyway, he writes his reviews in the style of Matt's writing, which I think is really clever, that I couldn't do at all. But basically, it's Scott King. He's a podcaster, and they're, as far as I know, they're all kind of old cases that he looks into, and he talks to people, and it's all very, very cleverly done and very, very popular. And we want more. Matt was only going to write this, and then things came along, and that one came along, and maybe it'll turn into 66 stories. Who knows? So that's my number 2. Right, go and finish it now. Thank you. He's gone. And my 3rd book, this is the proof copy, it's not the cover. This is The Paris Library by Janet Septilian Charles. And this is another one that was supposed to be originally published in June last year. And this proof copy is lovely because, look, you get your own little library ticket in it with your name on. Well, you do somewhere. Look, it came with a library ticket with my name on it. It's so beautiful. Anyway, I didn't know anything about these international libraries in cities. I didn't even know they existed. The Paris Library is set in the war, a bit like the other Paris book. And the librarian in here comes from a wealthy family. They just want her to marry a wealthy man and go and be a wealthy housewife, but she wants to work. And she goes to work in the Paris Library. And then the war comes, and their library is like a family. So it's really difficult to describe it, really. It's about the library, but it's about the individual people that run the library and what happens to them during the war. So a couple of them are Jewish, they get sent away to concentration camps. Some of the British and English people go back home from Paris. And the library staff that are left really risk everything they can. So they bundle up books and they deliver them to Jewish people who are no longer allowed to visit the library. And, you know, she's just a young girl with a basket, and she's stopped by the Nazi soldiers with these books. And if she's found taking them to these people, she will be killed. And it's just beautifully imagined, and I knew nothing about it. And the author actually worked in the Paris Library, so he uses her own insight to write the book. It's just another historical fiction that I just would never have thought of picking up, but it really, really is beautiful. So that's it. 2 historical and 1 podcast.
Lovely. Thank you. Joe?
I can hear you. Right, my February, very, very dark. I'll start with The Resident by David Jackson. Now, everybody knows I'm a huge David Jackson fan. This one, the tagline is, "There's a serial killer on the run and he's hiding in your house." So the serial killer is Thomas Brogan, and he's running away from his crime when he finds a little terrace of 4 houses. One of the houses is empty. One of them, there is an 89-year-old woman living in it. One has a middle-aged married couple, and the other has a very young married couple living in it. And when he goes into the loft, he finds that he can go all the way through the lofts and he can drop down to any of those 4 houses. And it's basically the story of how he kind of interacts with those people in the houses below. And it's, I mean, I loved it. And I know other people weren't quite so keen on it, but I love what David Jackson does. He messes with my sympathies, basically, because I always feel really, really sorry for the bad guys. It's just like I don't hate them at all. It's just, I think oh, you just needed a good mother's love or something like that. And I just think that, come and live with me. I'll look after you. I'll bake you a cake every so often and you'll be absolutely fine. No more serial killing. But yeah, that's a Viper book. I've just noticed I've actually got 3 Viper books on my list. So they've obviously gone to the dark side. Because the next one's also a Viper book. Now this one is Call Me Mummy by Tina Baker, who used to be on TV a lot. I think she was like a TV critic, wasn't she? And did like the soaps and things. I mean, this is dark. I read a lot of missing child and sort of murdered child mysteries. I do quite like a missing child. This
So
one,
do I.
this one is really, we have Mummy, and she's this very beautiful, glamorous woman, living on her own. She's obviously not been able to have a child of her own. She's tried IVF, and she has no child. And when she's out shopping one day, she sees Scummy Mummy. And Scummy Mummy is pregnant. She's got kids that obviously look like they're by different fathers. And there's this lovely little girl comes along and they start chatting. And she decides she's going to take this little girl, who I'm sure is called Tonya. She's 5, but she's 5 going on 16. At one point, Mummy's taken her and she wants to sing like little nursery rhymes with her, and Tonya's up there going, if you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it, and doing all the dances and things, and wondering why Mummy doesn't know the song. But it kind of makes you think about, the fact that this woman who's obviously very much a part of, she looks the part, she's very, very, very glamorous, and takes this child because she thinks this child will be better off with her and that she could give her a better lifestyle. But no, Mummy's not quite right. And both of the mothers struggle quite a lot. Sorry, my dog's decided to take a squeaky toy out behind me, so if you hear the squeaking, that's what it is. But that is very dark and I absolutely loved it. And my last one is The Shadow Man by Helen Fields, which is even darker. It's got a horrible, horrible beginning. Oh, it's this woman and her husband and her children have gone away, and she's there in the house on her own, and she's obviously gone to bed on her own, and she's relaxing, a bit of time on her own, and then the Shadow Man has broken in, and he gets into bed with her, and wraps his arms around her, and things don't go very well for her. The Shadow Man, he's on a roll. He's kidnapping people all over the city of Edinburgh. We don't know why, because they're all very different. But he ends up with 3 people locked in his flat. They don't know why they're there. We don't know why they're there. But we certainly find out. And it's a very dark journey along the way. And that is out from Avon Books.
Thank you. Linda, give us some light, fluffy stuff now, please.
Well, okay. This is The Last Bear by Hannah Gold, and it's a children's book, and it's out from HarperCollins on the 18th. And I have to confess, I kind of chose this because Hannah lives up the road from me, and she's helping out with our literary festival as one of our children's writing competition judges. And I thought, a children's book, I can fit that in and it'll be fun. I wasn't prepared for how stunning it is. It's got on my books of the year list already, along with Will Dean's The Last Thing to Burn, The Last Bear. There must be something in the word last, I think, at the minute. And it's about a little girl called April whose mother has died, and her father is so consumed with grief that he throws himself into his work. And he's a scientist. And they go off to Bear Island in the Arctic Circle. There are no polar bears or anything left anymore. One of the themes, of course, is global warming and all the rest of it. And as they're there for 6 months, April's father is so wrapped up in his work that she goes off and she explores by herself. And surprisingly, she encounters a polar bear, a thin, starving polar bear, which she befriends. I won't tell you the whole story, but it is absolutely stunning. It's beautifully written. It's poetic. If I just read you what Michael Morpurgo said about it, he said, "This is an important first novel, important for us, for polar bears, for the planet." And this is the bit that I completely agree with. It's deeply moving, beautifully told, and quite unforgettable. It is absolutely wonderful. If you've got children, Key Stage 2 age children in your life, buy them a hardback copy of this book. And the Levi Pinfold, who's done all the illustrations for it, is an award-winning illustrator as well. So it's just wonderful. I can't recommend it highly enough for all children of all ages, right? You know, from 6 to 106. Wonderful book. Completely in contrast, my second book is Light Seekers from Femi Coyote. I think that's how you say his name. And I chose this one because, like the Robert Jones Jr., The Prophets, I wanted to read more from Black writers or non-Caucasian writers this year. Because I, like you, Tracy, I think you said this, I haven't read enough. And this is about a clinical psychologist, Philip. And he has returned to Nigeria with his wife. And there has been a really graphic, violent killing of 3 students at the beginning of the book. And the story is him trying to find out why that happened. It uncovers corruption in Nigeria, betrayal. There's a lot about Nigerian university sects. And I nearly kind of, I recognise that. Wole Soyinka, who's a poet that I really, really like, is mentioned in here. And in fact, was one of the kind of founders of the Nigerian sects, although when he founded them, they were kind of not for violence or any other kind of reason. But those sects have since evolved, shall we say. And it's the first in what's going to be a series, and it's really, really entertaining, gives you a completely different culture. And the author himself has been a clinical psychologist in New York, so he knows his stuff. So it's really cleverly written. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then my third choice, so that one, by the way, is Bloomsbury Raven. My third choice I haven't read yet. It's Madam, Phoebe Morgan. It's about a young teacher who goes off to a school of a boarding school in Scotland with lots of traditions, and she and the girl students there uncover a really unpleasant past. I've only just had a chance to dip into the beginning of it, but it's really reminded me of Daphne du Maurier, so Rebecca type creepiness to it. So I'll be quite interested to see how that pans out. But again, it's called Madam because the nature of the school, all the female teachers are called Madam. So although this teacher is only sort of 24 years old and going along to take up a head of department post as a head of classics, she is called Madam. And I think there are some quite difficult themes that are going to emerge from it, you know, with things like abuse and so on. But I haven't actually had a chance to read it yet, but I think it could be quite an interesting and quite a disturbing read. So I don't know if any of the rest of you have read this one yet. You know, but I thought that looked an interesting one. So those are my 3 February ones. And this one is, that's Quercus, and that's coming out on the 18th.
Lovely, thank you. So that's February done. That's another 12 done. Well done, girls. Right, March. So I have picked 3 books that I haven't read yet. Can you hear me, Joe? Can you hear me? Okay. Sorry. So I haven't read these yet, but these are 3 that I am going to read and I'm really looking forward to. The first is The Girl.
Oh, yeah.
This is really odd to do. There we go. The Girl in the Missing Poster by Barbara Copperthwaite. Now, I'm going to be honest here. I haven't really read much about it, But I love Barbara's books. I've read all her previous books. So to be honest, if she was just reprinting a Chinese takeaway menu, I would read it. However, I have printed off the blurb so I can tell you about it. It was meant to be a March book, but for some reason, I've only just noticed it's now out now. So you can buy it now. It was out on the 23rd of Feb. Oh, no. Yeah, sorry. It's out on the 23rd of February instead of March. So it's out early. Barbara is a phenomenal standalone psychological thriller author. I adored Flowers for the Dead, Her Last Secret, The Perfect Friend, The Darkest Lies. So I've read them all, loved them all, reviewed them all. It's outstanding. The Elizabeth Haynes has just told me that I'm in for a treat. It's a fantastic. It's basically, all I know is it's about twins. One's gone missing and she's never seen again. She disappeared after her parents' anniversary party. One of the girls disappeared, running out into the night wearing her twin sister's red long coat, and she was never seen again. And Stella, the remaining twin, has obviously now looking for her. I'm not even going to bother reading. All I'm saying is, if it's by Barbara, read it, because you're in for a phenomenal psychological thriller full of twists and turns. So that's my first book of March. My second book of March, Barbara's saying that she is going to print a Chinese takeaway for me next. Harlan Coben's Win, standalone book, coming out on the 18th of March. Over 20 years ago, heiress Patricia Lockwood was abducted during a robbery of her family's estates and then locked inside an isolated cabin for months. She escaped, but then so did her captors, and the items stolen from her family were never recovered until now. A usual Harlan Coben thriller, so can't say more than that. He's written a book, can't wait to read it. And then my final, whizzing through this now because it's Pete. Oh, there we go. Good job I've got no porn on here. Hold on. Peter Swanson, Every Vow You Break, which again is also out on the 16th of March. So I presume that's a busy day in publishing. I adored Peter's early books. I can't remember what it's called now. It'll come to me in a minute. Someone give us a hand.
Oh, I've forgotten its name. I've forgotten it too.
Two people that meet in the airport and decide to murder. Anyone help me? Anyway,
I've got both in it.
Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, he writes really well. And this is his latest book. It's about a bride's dream honeymoon becomes a nightmare. There you go. The Kind Worth Killing. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Yet to read one that quite lives up to that, so hoping this one does. A bride's dream honeymoon becomes a nightmare when a man with whom she's had a regrettable one-night stand shows up in this electrifying psychological thriller, which sounds pretty racy and pretty good for me. So I'm looking forward to that one in March. So those are my three. So we've got Barbara's book, Peter Swanson, and Harlan's, and obviously we'll put them all up on my blog later. So Anne, moving on to you now.
I haven't read any of these either because I'm not on March yet. But my first one is The Dare by Leslie Cara. It's her third book and it's published by Doubleday Transworld. I love her writing. They're quite easy reads, but they're a bit twisty. I'll read you the blurb. This time it's different. She's gone too far now. She really has. Even though she was there when her best friend died, Lizzie has no memory of the accident herself. And it was an accident, wasn't it? Alice's friends and relatives seem to suspect Lizzie had a part to play in Alice's death, but Lizzie knows that can't be true. She would never have hurt Alice. 12 years later, unpacking boxes in the new home she shares with her fiancé, Lizzie is finally beginning to feel she can move on with her life, but someone has other ideas. 12 years is a long time to wait when you're planning the perfect revenge. Sounds good to me. So if it's as good as her others, it's going to be a great read. That's all I can say. Not a lot you can say when you haven't actually read it.
I know. We can talk about it on the next podcast about whether it did live up to its hype.
And the next one is The Castaways by Lucy Clark, and this is HarperCollins. I have heard that they're going to redo this blurb. My friend has read it and says that there aren't 7 strangers. and there isn't a killer. So that's really odd, isn't it? But basically, I'll find the blurb if there is a blurb, and if there isn't, I'm buggered, really, aren't I?
Quickly flip off to Goodreads and have a look.
It's Lucy Clott's 6th novel. She's got a first-class degree in English literature. Oh God, there isn't a blurb. I believe it's about a small plane with not very many passengers that crashes on an island, and they're castaways. I think it might be a bit of a locked door mystery. I'm not sure, but my friend tells me it's very good, and I've read Lucy Clott's before and I really, really liked it. So let's hope. We'll talk about that next time, won't we? Didn't research that one very well, did I? My third one I do know lots about. This is bound by Vanda Simon from Arenda, and it is part of her Sam Shepherd Investigators series, and they're amazing. Vanda is from New Zealand. The books are set in New Zealand, and Sam Shepherd is a real kick-ass female detective. She's amazing. I love the fact that it's set in a really tiny little town, a bit like Gainsborough, not, in New Zealand, on the coast, but really strange things happen. You know, it's a bit like Emmerdale, isn't it? It's a little tiny village, but oh my God, all those things that happen there. It's just, my mum lives in a little village and she's always saying nothing like that happens here. And I think that's what happens here. Anyway, bit on the tangent there. So Vanda Simon writes a fantastic female kick-ass detective. It's an amazing, amazing series, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. Did I do it justice? That's it. Done.
Whenever you're ready, Joe.
I can never hear you, so sorry.
Count yourself lucky.
Right, I've got 3 books for March, and they've all got a really nice little hook that kind of reel you in. The first one's The Prank by Liv Matthews, and it's about a girl called Eleanor who works in a restaurant. One night she meets somebody, well, a customer comes in, she recognises his face, goes home, Googles him, and apparently he's the producer of a very famous prank show, thinking sort of, you know, game for a laugh, that sort of thing. And then she finds out that that show was related to her father's death in some way. And she is now out to orchestrate the perfect revenge. So I like that because that's something a little bit different. I mean, I hate shows like that anyway. I just feel as though you're always laughing at the people and not with them, and they make me feel very uncomfortable. So you'll see how she gets her revenge on him in The Prank. And that is I think it's a Welbeck publishing, that's that one. Then I have got Lie Beside Me, and if you look at the cover, it kind of goes to Die Beside Me.
Oh yeah.
Oh, isn't that clever? And this is great. I can't say it any better than what's on the back. You wake up, your head is pounding, your mouth is dry, and you can't remember a thing. All you know is that the man in your bed is not your husband, and he is not breathing.
Oh.
And that is the third in the Jonah Sheen's series by, is it Gaither? Gaither Lodge? Is that how you pronounce it? Brilliant series. There's not many series that will keep me hooked in for, you know, a good few books, but this is the third one, and it is amazing. And then my last one, I don't actually have the book for that, but I've got a little print out of the cover, and it is Trust Me by T.M. Logan. And now I love his books. He's brilliant. I think he's kind of the British Linwood Barclay, Harlan Coben sort of. I'd go for that. If you like their books, you'll love his. And this one, A Lady on the Train, sitting there. Again, one who hasn't got children. I'm obviously drawn to these characters who have problems with their fertility and motherhood. She's on the train. She's just come back from an appointment. with a gynecologist, and she's been told there is no chance of her having a baby of her own. And she's split up with her husband, and she's just found out that her husband's new partner is pregnant. And she meets a young girl on the train who's only early 20s, and she's there with a young baby of about 3 or 4 months. And they get chatting, and then she asks her to hold the baby for her while she goes and takes a phone call. And the next thing she knows is the train's pulling out of a station, and she can see the mother walking off. They make eye contact, and the mother mouths sorry, and she's left holding the baby. But there you go. And that is out on the 18th of March, which looks like every book in the world is going to be out on the 18th of March.
Yeah.
And that's mine.
Thank you.
Right, my first one, funnily enough, is out on the 18th of March, and it's Catherine Isaac, The World at My Feet. This isn't the cover. The cover is a nice red, pretty cover. And Catherine Isaac used to write chick lit as Jane Costello, but her women's fiction always has, yes, there's some romance in it, but there's always a really serious subject behind what she's writing. And this is about Harriet and her daughter, Ellie. Harriet is a reporter and did quite a lot of work reporting on the Romanian orphanages, if you remember from the sort of 80s. And Ellie is a gardener, an Instagram gardener, so she's got huge following and she has sponsored posts and so on, but she's also agoraphobic. And so the story revolves around her, if you like, her mental health and her relationship with her mother. It's a really satisfying but thought-provoking women's fiction. So, and I love Catherine Isaac. I mean, I with Messy Wonderful Us, I remember I was quoted on the back cover of the hard copy, so I went into Tesco's and turned it round so that people could see as well the quotation. So that's Simon and Schuster. This one is a Viper, so I'm back with you, Joe, with the dark stuff. The Last House on Leeds Street, Catriona Ward. I have absolutely no idea how to tell you about it, because anything you say is going to give it away. But it's about Ted, who lives with his daughter and his cat, and it's about Dee, who is trying to find the person that she thinks may have abducted her sister. Except it isn't about any of those things either. And it completely blew my mind. I hadn't got a clue what was going on for a lot of the time, but I couldn't stop reading it. And although it's quite unpleasant and quite creepy and quite nasty, it's also really compassionate and humane, and I absolutely loved it. So that's Viper, and again, I'm not quite sure when that's coming out. I can't remember.
Probably the 18th of March.
I've got it written down somewhere, but yeah, probably. But it's excellent. I can't recommend it highly enough. Joe, have you read this? You were nodding. Yeah, it's good.
I've read it. I've read it.
Yeah.
You read it, Anne?
You'd love it.
You got 2 copies.
2 copies.
Yeah.
We could give one away.
Yeah.
I'm doing a mega giveaway in March for my 10th birthday.
Ooh.
I've got a book a day to give away.
Oh, brilliant. And then my final one, we're back to historical Paris again, While Paris Slept. And I haven't read this one, but it's about Paris in 1944, when a girl is herded on a train bound for Auschwitz. And then there's a follow-up in Santa Cruz in 1953. Now, I don't know how those 2 stories are going to come together, except that the blurb says, on a darkened platform, 2 destinies become entangled. Their choice will change the future in ways neither could have imagined. So it's got that historical feel to it. It's a headline book, and it doesn't actually come out on the 18th of March. It comes out on the 4th. So we've got a slight difference there. But I think with, the Paris Library and the Dressmaker of Paris, I think this is going to be one of those books that sits within that genre. And it says, beautiful, powerful, unforgettable, a stunning portrait of the brutality of war and the tenacity of love. So I quite fancy that one soon when I can get round to it.
Fantastic. Have we done it? Is that it?
Yeah.
We've done 36 books in an hour. I think that's a record.
I wish I could read as quick as that.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, we will be back in a few months' time to talk about the next quarter. But I just want to say goodbye to everyone on Facebook now. So stay with us, ladies, because we can continue this chat privately in a minute. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for viewing us and for your lovely comments. And hopefully we've suggested some books that you can download and read as soon as they're out. Yeah, if you've got any suggestions that we should read, then let us know. Have a lovely evening, everyone, and stay safe.